talking about addiction. What is up, alien army? I'm Oculus, the alien next door, purveyor of esoteric lore. And on this channel, we discuss everything out of this world. Today's topic is going to be in regards to a question I was asked about addictions. So clearly everyone here knows what an addiction is. It's something that someone is compulsively driven to do, and addiction is a very real thing. So I do just want to say, first of all, that I am not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, I have a degree in being me, and I'm a motherfucker sitting here on a channel on fucking YouTube. So do whatever the fuck you want. It ain't none of my business. I'm just going from my perspective because I was asked a question. This is my fucking channel. If you really feel like there's an addiction going on that is something that you want to seek counsel from someone else from, by all means do that. Typically people are intuitively guided if they are meant to seek counseling from an outside source, be it a book, be it a magazine, be it an actual professional who studies the mind, be it a friend, be it a relative, whoever it is. If you are seeking counsel because you feel someone might have a different perspective in terms of your addiction, you will intuitively be guided to proceed along that route. If this pertains to you, maybe just calling a friend and talking to them about an addiction that you have. Maybe that's all the therapy you need. Or maybe for some, it might be someone downloading a mental health app, visiting a psychiatrist. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with any method, okay? For some, it even might be they just journal out their thoughts, right? So everyone has a different outlet and everyone's going to be comfortable with different things. So I'm not going to sit here and say that every method is going to work for everyone. But if you are intuitively called to seek counsel from outside, by all means do that. But you will know when you are meant to do that. So sometimes someone might have thought about seeking counseling, but it doesn't feel right in the moment, and then maybe 2 weeks later it feels right. So feel inclined to seek an outside help or have a conversation. When you're ready to do this, when you're ready to process what that addiction means to you, you'll just know it. These are my thoughts, okay? If you are addicted to something, if anyone is addicted to anything, this is an overcompensation for a lack that they perceive about themselves from the inside out. What do I mean by this? The addiction wants to fill a void. It doesn't matter in what type of addiction it is, although we will get to that because there might be some correlations there, but any type of addiction can play out differently because everyone is so different. Everyone's psyche is vastly different. Someone might develop an addiction for, let's say, you know, they always talk about like drugs or alcohol or whatever. So person A might be addicted to drugs for a different reason than person B, or person C might be addicted to alcohol in a similar way that person A is addicted to drugs, but it's a different addiction, it's a different vice. So that's the first thing to understand. So they can just play out differently for everyone. Let's say someone has anxiety, so they're addicted to a thought that isn't really going on, right? They're not being present in the moment. Let's say they are addicted to alcohol or sex, or they might be addicted to gambling. Whatever vice they have is trying to fill a void. It's trying to fill a void of something that they perceive as lack in themselves. Where does this lack come from? So like I said, it's going to be different for everyone. Now, if let's say someone has an addiction to something, let's say for example an addiction to alcohol, right? Now their physical vessel, and Joe Dispenza really goes into this, you know, way more because he actually knows like the science of it. But basically, if you can become addicted to a thought or a tangible object, it would be the same thing because they're both producing chemicals in the brain which are really just sensing that we want more of this because it makes us feel a certain way. So the sensors in the brain are essentially latching on to the thing that they are given so much, and now they become used to into it. So someone who's to alcohol might be able to drink 6 bottles of Jack Daniels in one sitting.
Whereas me, I wouldn't even be able to have a shot of Jack Daniels unless mixed with some fucking tea and lemon and honey. It's good.
And ain't nothing wrong with knocking back 6 bottles of Jack Daniels.
I'm like, wow, but like if someone built up a tolerance, they can be technically addicted to the alcohol just because they built up the tolerance, so their neurons in their body are like, they're expecting it, right? So the physical vessel can get addicted to physical, tangible things of the way that I explained with Joe Dispenza. The physical vessel can become addicted to intangible things such as thoughts or emotions, because it's the same thing. It's like if someone built up so many anxious thoughts or shitty emotions, they're constantly bombarding all of their senses with it. The body is now producing chemicals that are going to produce more chemicals to want to feed the addiction to get more shitty thoughts and more shitty emotions, just like the physical vessel might want to produce the same chemicals, right? The gratification chemicals. And I don't know the science, so I'm going to try with that. You can be addicted to the actual liquor, just like you can be addicted physically to an actual shitty thought or a shitty emotion, because your vessel is just getting used to these hormone type of things which are being produced in the brain, so it can filter down. If someone is physically addicted to drugs, it's like the drugs have to leave the body, right? And the physical vessel, okay, and this is for physical addiction, okay, as well as, you know, the thought addictions or emotional addictions, right? Whatever one is addicted to, the body wants so much more of it because it built up a tolerance, and now the physical vessel is hooked on the feeling, so to speak. Whatever feeling you were getting, whether it was shitty or whatever the fuck, when you were thinking those thoughts, that you became addicted to thoughts, your body is going to want more of them, and you're going to seek out more crazy fucking thoughts, crazy anxious thoughts that make no sense, but they feed the addiction. Just like someone who is addicted to alcohol, the 6 bottles of Jack Daniels, they're not even going to be feeling anything, so now they're going to reach for a 7th bottle of Jack Daniels just because the body is craving, is trying to feed the addiction. But the addiction, if someone can get over the physical symptoms of the addiction, which the physical symptom of an addiction would be the alcohol, or it would be the thought, or it would be the online porn, or it would be the gambling, or it would be whatever it is. Individuals sometimes can be addicted to shopping even, or they can be addicted to chaos, or they can be addicted to, have you ever seen this show?
I forget, but I don't know what it's called.
It's about people that start eating things in their house. Like they start eating like the paint off the wall. That is an addiction. And you would think someone's eating paint off the fucking wall. Like,
oh my God,
how are they still chilling? But it's like their body got used to it, because probably they tried a little nibble of that paint and then their body got used to it, built up. But here we want to ask ourselves why the addiction came into play, because you can get rid of the physical symptoms, right? But the void which caused the addiction to take form in the first place is still there. So what is the root? So the question that someone really wants to ask themselves is, number one, why is this addiction playing out? Why this particular addiction? So it's going to be different for everyone, but sometimes there might be a correlation of the specific addiction and why that took over. We are going to get to the place of lack, like where that came from, but first, for some, not for everyone, they might have witnessed a similar physical addiction in their past that left an impression on them, let's just say. So they grew up in like an alcoholic background or something, or maybe there was some lewd sexual things going on in the household, or there was gambling that went on in the household, or whatever was going on in the household that someone would absorb as that's all they knew for an amount of time. An addiction can come on as well after formative years as well. Like if someone experiences something, they might develop an addiction because of that, or if they bear witness to something, they might have an addiction in regards to that as well. So addiction can be latched onto at any point in one's life experience, but a lot of times someone will talk about that they grew up in a household where everyone was drinking and everyone was drunk and everyone was fucking fighting. Okay, I've heard that, it fucking happens. Then to them, they just started drinking heavily because that's all they knew. So they might have even taken on an addiction because they witnessed it from elsewhere, and they just simply think that that is normal behavior, but it's really someone who came before them who they witnessed that with or experienced whatever it was with, it's because that individual was trying to fill a void from something. Sometimes it can just come from a perceived normalcy of the addiction. So if, let's say, someone grew up in a household where everyone was smoking, they might have developed a smoking addiction, but it came from a place of that's all they know, okay? It doesn't necessarily have to be based off of any type of trauma. You know, because different individuals, they might have different vices or quite a few vices. One addiction, let's say a smoking addiction, might have just been picked up because that what was normal going on in the household, but they might have another addiction elsewhere which came from something else. But either way, it comes from a perceived lack. There's like two branches of that. I did just want to throw it out there that some addictions can just come from a place of it being normal for them, because this being normal for the individual. So you might want to think about if you witness anyone else conducting that type of behavior at any point, or you had an experience with someone who was just, you know, constantly drinking, constantly smoking around you, and you pick that up. The other types of a way that addiction can be brought upon in the vessel is through some sort of trauma, some sort of negative experience, something that an individual perhaps bore witness to and didn't know how to process the emotions. So there's a void. Now, this is why the addiction occurs. So another way you can find out about like voids and things like that, because now we're going to get into like the emotional aspect of it, because sometimes, like I said, addictions could just be seen as normal, even though it is an addiction, and your physical vessel might have a dependency on that thing because you might have been like just fueling it for so long with the additive thing. Some of them can just be picked up innocently. So if you know for a fact that it isn't something that you picked up innocently, you'll know right now, whoever's watching this,
Still here, real MVP.
if you are still watching this and you know that your addiction was not picked up innocently, is picked up in a nefarious way, okay? And this could be so different for everyone, so I don't even want to specify, but if an addiction was picked up in a nefarious way, it's a void due to emotions that one is not wanting to face, or perhaps they don't even know what's going on. Some individuals can be addicted to something and not have any idea where it came from, why it is, but it is coming from a place of lack, I promise you, because that's what the addiction is, right? I always talk about the poles. Addiction, the opposite of addiction is too little, right? It's coming from a place of lack. So Louise Hay has a lot of literature in regards to different areas of the humanoid vessel and what type of emotions they are correlated to. So that might be beneficial for some of you to pick up. Like, let's say if you have an addiction in a certain area, it's like, why would someone have an addiction to smoke? Is it something with their mouth? Is it something with their throat chakra? Is it like they need to voice their opinion more and they're silencing themselves by constantly shoving a cigarette, right, in their mouth and smoking because they just don't want to talk, they don't want to let their feelings out? It's coming from a place of lack. Let's say with that one example, and do this for anything that you feel like you might have an addiction to, ask yourself, why smoking? Is it something that you picked up? Number one, is that from that you picked up innocently? Oh, everyone around you was smoking, you just got dependent on it because the physical vessel was producing the chemicals that wanted it all the time. Or was it picked up from elsewhere, from a nefarious place? You want to look at, if you choose to do so, look at the Louise Hay, just type in Louise Hay and physical symptoms of body with emotion, like something, it'll come up, okay? I don't know exactly what it's called. I don't know if she has a book, I don't know, I don't want to say, but she does have a list, I know, and there's a whole bunch there, so that might be beneficial to some. But we want to think about it, right? Why would someone develop, let's say, a smoking addiction? Was it to silence themselves because perhaps they're feeling a sense of lack that no one ever wants to listen to them? Maybe they grew up in a household that they felt like they were silenced, no one ever heard them, right? So now it's like throat chakra is being blocked, unable to express themselves, but it's coming up because there's imbalance in the poles, right? There's too little, they feel like they're not speaking up for themselves, so they overcompensate in the other direction, but it's still related to the same thing. It's still related to the throat chakra. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's just one correlation. Obviously, if someone has an addiction to perhaps in a sexual arena, they might have had an experience or bore witness to something that had to do with sexual activities, okay? There could be a whole lot of shit going on with that type of stuff, okay? So you want to look at it too. Does the addiction make logical sense? Because not everyone who has an addiction might resonate with the fact that the body part affected by the addiction, an example, throat chakra, mouth not being able to feel like they can speak up for themselves, voice their opinion, overcompensating by smoking. Not all of them are going to work like that. Some can also just develop as a crutch out of nowhere. So if someone, let's say, is in a lot of emotional pain, they're trying to fill a void, so they're seeking a stimulant, they're seeking a drug. So this individual might not necessarily have anything about drugs that went on with them detrimental in their experience, right? But it just might be an emotional lack, again, that place of lack on the inside, and they're looking for something to make them feel something. So that's why they turn to stimulants, like maybe they're doing MDMA and they're fucking popping Molly. That would be an example, but not a direct example. Whereas let's say there was some sort of sexual incident that occurred with someone, and then now they have a porn addiction or something, right? It's directly tied. So you want to also look at that, because someone might not have had any experience at all with drugs, but they were just looking to fill a void, and they heard, hey, if you pop this pill, you're going to feel euphoric for a few fucking hours, and then that's what drew them to it. So there are different ways. So don't think that just because someone has a smoking addiction that they were not able to speak up for themselves, because maybe their addiction came from elsewhere, but smoking was just simply the crutch that they reached for. And this could go for anything. You obviously know your situation. Do any of those resonate with you? Do you find a correspondence of the thing you're addicted to and a body part or a chakra or an emotional type of energy? Do you realize that perhaps maybe you just picked up this addiction innocently because someone else was addicted to smoking and you always just saw smoking, so that's why you started doing it? Or is it something that you can say that maybe you bore witness to something, you didn't know how to process the feeling, and then you just reach for the first thing to comfort you? Let's say someone gets into an argument with their significant other, they might run to go online shopping, and that can be an addiction too. So addiction is not limited to anyone or anything. It is just something that someone is obsessively continuing on in their psyche, maybe because their physical vessel has a dependence on it, or their emotions have a dependence on it, and their emotions definitely do. But have to get to the root. That's why I asked you all those questions. You have to get to the root of where did it come from, because it is coming from a place of lack. But what caused that lack? What caused you to be in a position where you didn't feel abundant, and now you have to overcompensate in a certain area because it is coming from that lack state? An addiction, I do just want to touch on this, is not necessarily only limited to obsessive behavior, constant. Addiction can also be pushing away something. What do I mean by this? Because I just want to cover everything that's coming to mind now in regards to addiction. So let's say someone is addicted, they have a sex addiction, right? So two different individuals who might have picked up a sex addiction from different places, right? One is doing too much and one is just abstaining, but they're both addicted and the focal point is sex. But an addiction doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing something a lot. An addiction can mean an aversion to doing that thing at all. That's still an addiction. It's coming from a place of lack because you're trying to control it. If someone abstains from sex, they might feel that they are in control of their experience because they're like, oh, well, everyone else is doing it, so I'm not going to. But that's still an addiction because it's overcompensating for something that they perceive as lack. So what lack in them stemmed from them not feeling in control of their environment. Because a lot of times addictions, like even let's say with food, some individuals might have a food addiction where they're just ingesting way too much and it's compensating for something else. Some might be eating way too little, but they're both addictions. So abstaining from something is still the need to want to control something because they feel lack on the inside that they would be able to have control over that thing. So now they're limiting themselves. Well, I can control this, so I'm not going to do that. Whereas someone else, they might be eating too much and they're thinking that if they control what they're eating, then nothing else is going to happen, because they're still there. They want to be in control of the food, but it's not about the food. Do you see what I'm saying? It's about something that came from lack, something that is looking for overcompensation, whether it's to abstain completely away from the thing, or if it's to overindulge in it. So don't think that an addiction is just someone overly doing something. It could be someone doing absolutely nothing, like actively pushing something away because of the addiction as well. So it can come in many formats, and it is going to be different for everyone. But like I said in the beginning of the video,
You still your real MVP.
These are just my thoughts. I ain't a fucking doctor, I ain't a psychiatrist, I ain't nothing, and I'm gonna look on the fucking YouTube, okay?
but I will tell you this: if you are guided to seek counsel for your addiction, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Okay, like I said, it could even be fucking buying a journal and telling all your thoughts in a journal, but you have to come looking at it. If you believe that you are going through an addiction, where did you feel lack? You have to ask yourself these questions, because you know you better than anyone. Where in your life do you feel lack? Think of all the areas in your life, go into the little sectors. What is an area where you feel lack? Where do you feel where there's not enough? Or where was perhaps an instance where that really showed you lack? Did you notice the addiction pop up right after that? Something to overcompensate for the lack. It's coming from a place of lack, so you really have to evaluate yourself, your circumstances. When did the addiction start? You might want to look at that. You might want to look at if there were any individuals in your close circle that had that same addiction. You might want to look at, were there any experiences that you bore witness to, or you actually participated in, and then it correlates to your addiction. You want to ask yourself all of these questions, because that is how you get to the root of the fucking issue. And then, let's say, if an individual decides to go to rehab, their body is going to get over the addiction, but sometimes their emotions might not. That psyche, that rubbish, that residue is still in there, and then that addiction can transfer to something else. So let's say someone was addicted to drugs, they go to rehab and they're clean, but they're not really clean from an emotional, psychological standpoint. Their body is their physical vessel, but they didn't get to the root. So that's why now they transfer their drug addiction to perhaps gambling or whatever, right? So sometimes addictions can jump if you don't deal with the root. That's why
I implore you
to get to the root. Ask yourself these questions. All the questions that I said in the video, I don't remember all of them right now. That's what you might want to do. Or if let's say you noticed something that was like a childhood memory, let's say someone else who was there and maybe experienced the same thing as you or something similar, if you're guided to ask them their perspective of that situation, I feel like that was a message specifically for someone. I don't know who, but I feel like someone needs to hear that. Like, there's a situation that you experienced with someone else, and you noticed an addiction in regards to that, and I'm sensing it would help you to talk about that with that individual, which is fucking weird. I don't know. It could be anything. I don't know. That was a message for someone. So
We're getting spooky up in this motherfucker.
I don't know who that was for, but yeah, talking about it with the other individual that was shared that experience or participated in that experience or showed you that experience, I don't know, but I feel like someone needs to talk to that individual, and that is all you, whoever you are, and there might be a few yous, but if that message resonates, if you speak to that individual, it's going to be gone from your psyche. For all of the emotional residue, how we want to clear it, how you want to get to the root, because the physical vessel can just be over it, but you want to make sure that you're over it from an emotional level. And if you are over it from an emotional level, your body is going to follow suit, because the body is tangible. It follows where the consciousness is directing it. And again, Joe Dispenza, he has a lot of videos about that type of thing, and he explains it in detail, so check those out if you want. Once you get to the root, once you get to that emotional rubbish that's just been sitting around in there, that's been long overdue to just dissipate, once you get to that, your body is going to follow suit. Obviously, if you need to take physical precautions and things like that so your vessel can have a smooth, you know what I mean, your body will follow suit once you get your mind right. But it not always, when the body is healed, is the emotions and the psyche healed. So that's how you get to the root, by asking yourself all these questions. in regards to anything that you believe is an addiction. If you are guided to counsel yourself in it, you can start by journaling or going, through all the mental gymnastics, all the questions, asking yourself that. Do a deep dive into your own psyche, maybe figure that out if that's more comfortable for you than seeking outside assistance. For some, like I said, you might just want to share the story with a friend and they'll offer their perspective and it'll release that demon, so to speak, which is the addiction, which is a person's sense of lack. Some of you might choose to actually seek a medical professional, and there is nothing wrong whatever route you take, because at the end of the day you want to know that you're queen, right? But if you can do it yourself and you could go inside your own psyche and look inside your mind,
sometimes it can be a scary motherfucking place.
Fucking no. If you can go inside your own mind and you can figure shit out and you get to the root of it, I promise you, you could heal your fucking mind, you heal your vessel, you can heal everything you fucking want, because you're God, you're creating your own experience. But if you want to seek outside counsel, by all means, homie, do you, but you will know if you are guided to speak to an outside source about it. That's what I got for you, like I said in the beginning. So if you know, you know. I am Oculus, the alien next door, purveyor of esoteric lore. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful stroll. We will chit chat again soon.